All right, we'll get started. I'll just let people in as they're coming in. Thank you for being here, everybody. This is really, really cool. This happened because it was requested by one of y'all um, who, and I realize the value that we have for you guys and being able to share some wisdom of what college computer science is all about. And as many of you are getting ready and heading towards that, what to expect, what to look for, what to ask for, and how to just really to get some advice on what you should be doing. So very quickly, I'd like to introduce this panel. This is an amazing panel of, to me, just legendary SummerTech people that had they all not walked in the room one day, this place just would not be the same place. Every one of these people has had major impact on SummerTech, whether it be curriculum or culture or tradition and all of that. I mean, it's just like a dream team. It really is. So without further ado, we have Gabriel Ehrlich, holds a BS in computer science from the Wentworth Institute of Technology. We have Jake Rowan, holds a BA in computer science and linguistics, double major from the University of California, Santa Cruz. I'm currently a software developer at Epic Systems. We have, as I do this, I'm letting people in. We have Matthew Baptist, holds a BS in physics from Johns Hopkins. His current role is the engineering lead at Argus, living over in London, running a really cool company out there. We have our resident game design person in here. Liliana Klein holds a BS in game design and development at Rochester Institute of Technology. Currently technical game designer at Rockstar Games. We have Roger Iyengar, who I think was at the very first year of SummerTech, or at least the second, from all those years ago, holds a BS in computer science from Washington University in St. Louis, and a PhD in computer science from Carnegie Mellon. And we have Jared Oken, holds a BS in game design and computer science dual major from RPI, and a master's in computer science also from RPI, and is also a software developer at Epic Systems right now. We have Eamon Nugent, a senior software engineer at Lambda, doing incredible work. We have Anna Henderson, who is currently a computer science major at Cornell University. And last but not least, we have Sam Perlman, who I didn't get his credentials, but Sam, are you a CS major?
Yeah.
CS major at Harvard University. So a really great team here. And I have a set of questions. These are pre-asked questions. I sent out a questionnaire. So most of these are from the community. I don't know if we'll have time for a town hall type of Q&A, but I think these questions really are what everybody is looking for and hopefully get the best answers. Not everybody's going to answer each one of these. I'm going to have them raise their hands as they want to answer. And we'll try to get as much as we can in before 9 o'clock. And then a few questions for everybody at the end. So without further ado, computer science is a large field. How can you narrow down your interest within computer science? Who won my Eamon?
As long as I can get myself unmuted. Yeah, so what I always tell people to do anytime they're interested in computer science and are looking for a little bit of guidance on what specifically, how to find their way around it, I always recommend just picking up a project and start doing it. So anytime you can get your hands dirty with computer science and learn, hey, I like working with data. Hey, I like working with graphics. I like working with websites. I like working with AI, et cetera. Anytime you can do something like that, I highly recommend it.
Okay, Jake.
So just to represent the other side of the coin, those are all that's a fantastic advice for things you can do. In terms of the more theoretical aspects of computer science, honestly, the way that I found most of the things I was interested in was just by shopping around little seminars that my school had that were run by professors, or talking to them or looking at what they study. and seeing what seemed interesting that way. So I got a lot of my interest from reading papers and reading abstracts and looking at work that other people had done.
Excellent. Roger.
I think to build off what Jake was saying, yeah, certainly college is a really good place to explore things. I think as far as there's a bit of a disconnect between computer science as a field and computer science as a job. So software engineer, data scientist, that's the stuff that you can really get doing projects. But computer science, I think, there is this whole theoretical area that doesn't necessarily translate nicely to working, but that might be really fun to study. And I think, yeah, reading papers, going to talks, stuff at universities is a good way to experience that.
Roger, while I have you, what does a data scientist do?
So data science is really about, answering questions. And so if I'm at a company, maybe my boss comes to me and said, we made less money last year than we did the year before, find that out. And so your job is to go through all the information you have about customers coming into stores, how long they spend there, the rates of product returns, and basically making mathematical models to try to answer high-level questions. So it's less about creating software that developer might do, but it still is very technical, and it's probably more mathematical than a lot of engineering work would be.
Okay. Anybody want to follow that up, or does that cover it? Okay. Let me move on. All right. Here's a big question. What is the difference between the types of majors offered? Example, computer science, computer engineering, engineering in computer science, etc. What type of career path do they set you up for? And is there a different career path depending on the major? So there's a lot in there. Roger.
So I think just because software is such a hot field, I guess, this year has changed that a little bit. Most sort of computer science related fields, can set you up for a job as a software engineer. So computer engineering or electrical engineering, those probably, can get you a job as a software developer. I think, electrical engineering and computer engineering are more on the hardware side. And so those might be, get you a job building radios, for example, or, actually working with electronics. And when you start out as a more engineering major, you learn languages like C, you might even learn hardware design languages. If you start out as a computer science major, you learn languages like Java and Python, and eventually you'll probably get into some of the lower level stuff, but it's not a focus starting out the way it is in engineering. And then, if you're doing math or statistics, you sort of get the other side where you do more, R or, data science or SQL, sort of data sciencey things starting out. And I think, math and statistics, and, some schools actually have data science majors for people who are more interested in, the answering questions as opposed to building things. But yeah, I would say anything can get you a job as a software engineer, but, yeah, if you want to do hardware or you want to do data science, then a major that specializes in that might be a better option.
Okay. Anyone else? Jake.
So to kind of build on that a little bit, I personally, I'm a software developer, as I said at the beginning, and I personally know a bunch of other software developers who have degrees in computer engineering, electrical engineering, pure math, physics. That's really common. I also know a bunch of people who did these kinds of other related majors. Like I know someone who majored in robotics. I know someone who majored in computer engineering, etc. And generally what I've found is, because of the way, in terms of after college, and because of the way the job market works, there's such a high need for software developers. If you learned about computer science enough in whatever degree program you're doing, you can make it back to being a software developer. But if you want to do like really low level, what's called embedded systems work, so like the kind of thing where you make small individual devices, that kind of stuff, or you want to do something like robotics, it doesn't go the other way. If you studied pure computer science, it can actually be quite hard to get back out into something more specific and more engineering like. And so in that way, doing something like electrical engineering can be more flexible in that sense. However, the people who did do that, a lot of them say that it made a lot more work for them later when they did come back and just be a software developer. So if you know that that's what you really want to do, then the kind of the simple answer there is the best one.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh, Jared.
I think like everyone's both Jake and Roger's answers were both very good in this case. I would also just like add one addendum in that schools can be different. It is important if you are checking, like, yes, these overview of the different types of majors is important, but also schools will have their own unique things for what they'll call specific to engineering or specific to computer science. So even with all that we're saying, if you really want to dig into the weeds of what's different between these at the schools you're interested in, actually like look at these majors, look at what types of classes that they offer and what is required to just make sure that you're actually like taking the types of classes that you're interested in, instead of just assuming that what we're saying is universal to all colleges.
Right. That's good advice. And I have a series of questions about college. Anybody else have anything on that before I move on? Eamon.
Yeah, just to build off what Jared said, one thing that could be really useful is just talking to people at the college. For example, I know most colleges, you don't decide on your major by day one. So you can spend the first year kind of figuring out, okay, do I want to be a computer engineer or do I want to be a computer scientist? And you can take classes that are relevant to both, but just talk to people at the college who have done both and see what they think, see what they like.
Okay, before I move on, added to the panel tonight is Isabella Rawl. She is a CS major, sophomore at Stanford, and another longtime SummerTech Udidum person. Okay, one question before we get to more college things is simply what's the difference between computer science and programming? Roger.
So I would say computer science, there's this quote I like where the two biggest lies about computer science are that it's a science and that it's about computers. I think the comparison that gets made a lot is computer science is to computers what biology is to microscopes or astronomy is to telescopes. It really looks at solving problems. And certainly, computers are machines that can solve problems, but it's much more about computation and math and theory that goes along with that. And certainly programming is something that's taught in computer science, but there are a number of programs where, you could go to college and be a CS major and, take as few programming classes as possible. And that gets replaced with, classes where you do a lot of math and proofs. And so, yeah, it's much more about, solving problems, and programming is one way of solving problems, but, writing math and doing proofs are also ways of solving problems.
Okay. Any follow-up to that? Isabella? No? Thought you raised your hand, Isabella. No, I was wrong. Jake. Jake.
Promise on the later questions, I'll let some other people go. This is like my pet question. I get asked this, I get asked a lot of questions that actually boil down to this, especially by college freshmen or people just about to start their first college classes. So one of the things, everything Roger said is absolutely true, but even further than that, one of the things a lot of people expect when they go for a degree in computer science is that they're going to be learning about programming and what they would need to do programming as a job. And that is certainly part of what you learn in a computer science program. But it is not necessarily even the main thing that they're trying to teach you, depending on what school you go to, depending on what kind of degree you're getting. A lot of them are actually about the kind of abstract math Roger was talking about in terms of the classes that you must take. And so that loses a lot of people and they end up kind of lost trying to figure out like, wait, I wanted to be a programmer and now they're asking me to take 3 classes worth of proofs about finite automata. I don't even know what a finite automaton is. What it has not, this is not web development, right? So one of the biggest things to know is that you can be a programmer not only without a degree in computer science, but you can be a programmer without a bachelor's degree in a lot of places and be perfectly good at it. The point of programming is to create stuff that does things and people can interact with it. The point of computer science is to learn about abstractly what is computable. And those are really not the same thing and really do not require the same background necessarily. Very few software development jobs and programming jobs require the kind of theoretical knowledge you would get from a computer science program. Those ones would be like, if you want to make an operating system, then you're going to need to learn about some certain kinds of algorithms and certain really in-depth things. Or if you want to work on the physics engine of a video game and make a brand new one, you're going to have to get really in-depth on how that's going to be efficient. But for your average making a website, computer science is helpful in like the grand scheme of things, but not what you need day to day.
Okay. Amen.
Yeah. I mean, just as an example, I don't have a college degree and I'm a software engineer. So it's by no means required to get a degree in software engineering or a degree at all to be able to be I hope at least sometimes competent software engineer. The big thing that I think about programming versus computer science is programming is what I do. I don't do computer science. I don't make computers faster. I don't use really complex algorithms to improve our day-to-day. I don't use finite state machines. Other people have done that. Computer science is writing the libraries that programmers use. And that's a little bit of jargon, but essentially there are a group of people who write very, very fast algorithms and very performant systems that programmers like myself use. I don't know how finite state machines work. I don't need to. It's not relevant to my day-to-day. As much as I would enjoy knowing about them, I use other people's systems to be able to create something that I'm asked of.
Okay. Roger?
I think one thing that I just want to add on is it is true that there are a lot of things that you'll learn in a computer science major that you won't use day to day as a software developer. Stuff that was already mentioned, functional programming, queuing theory. But I would say that learning that stuff really does change how you think. And there are certainly, some jobs where, having that change in your thinking isn't going to help. But I would say there are a lot of software jobs where even if you're not literally writing an OS kernel or, doing machine learning algorithms, just knowing how this stuff works does help your thinking, even if you're not literally doing that yourself.
Okay. Jared?
And I guess just as like the final like nail, and I'm sure Roger could attest to this too, because he's also taking like higher level CS. You get to a certain point where you're going to be taking like a decent amount of classes where you don't program at all. in a CS major or CS masters or CS graduate degree. Like I could name a couple classes off the top of my head where if I wanted to, I could never have touched a computer in order to pass that class. Now, granted, I kind of had to like write them up on and print them out, but like actual code, didn't have to do squat.
Interesting. And Matt?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think kind of following up on what Roger was saying there, and sort of taking a slightly different view of it. You know, I've been programming and been at SummerTech for a long time and been programming for a long time. And even over the course of, 10 years, 12 years, however long it's been, I think there's been a lot of changes in terms of like the tools, the frameworks, the libraries, even like the paradigms and the way people think about computing. And so I think some of the value of the computer science degree, even if like right now, I want to be a software developer. I know I want to be a game developer. I know, whatever you have in mind. I think that the tools and the frameworks, by the time you're doing that, are already going to be completely different than what they are today. And so learning how to think about problems and learning about how to reason and sort of the underpinning behind those things actually gives you that longevity in a field that's constantly changing and rapidly changing, and gives you the ability to sort of always know what's going on and how to keep your skills kind of up to date and relevant. So that's maybe the way I would slightly push back on that idea that it is so disconnected from your day-to-day and what you're doing.
Interesting. And kind of, which goes along the first question, what might your advice be to someone who's on the fence about majoring in CS? Roger.
So I think for me, it was like a discrete math class where you really have to write proofs and know how to write proofs. That was a class where I thought, this is really fun. I enjoy doing this. I think, yeah, taking a class like that where, you're past the intro sort of, we're going to teach you how to program and more, you're really going to have to think here. And, we're asking you to solve some question where it's not just a trivial algorithm does it. Just taking a class like that, I think, sort of makes or breaks people as CS majors. Some people will take discrete math and hate it. Some people will take it and love it. And so I think that, first real intense proofs class is really the thing that's, makes or breaks a CS major.
Okay, and Liliana.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about this, I guess, from a game development perspective, because a lot of people kind of come from the opposite direction. They're not usually on the fence. They're like, yeah, definitely want to do game development. And then they get into their college program or they get into the industry and they realize, maybe I don't really want to do game development. And so it's important to really, I guess, ask yourself, like, do I like playing games or do I like making games? And a great way to kind of find that out for yourself is to try making a game, no matter where you are in your how much programming you know or no programming, because not all of game development it requires programming at all. I don't really do much programming at my job, but you try making even just the smallest little game, something on the the lines of like the projects that sometimes we have at SummerTech. And if you try to see if you actually enjoy that is something that is important, because a lot of people get into it and they think they just they get disappointed. So even if so my advice for someone on the fence or really excited about game development would be to try making a game and really see if that's for you.
Excellent, thank you. Anna.
Yeah, kind of going off of what Liliana was saying, I think getting that practical experience is really important in order to determine how passionate you are about something. Like, I know there is a couple of projects that I've worked on where if I didn't really truly love what I was doing, I don't think I would have been able to actually complete that project to like the quality that was like expected of me. So like certainly like it is possible to like pursue a career in like, for example, software development without having true passion for it. But if you do, it will get you through all of like the super hard technical challenges, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else? All right, let's talk about college itself. I think right now we have 4 people in here who are currently in school. Wait, 1, 2, 3. Actually, one more is about to come in. So we have 3 current CS majors at 3 amazing schools. Where is my question? Should I go to a school that focuses on technology? And I guess that's a bigger question of, look, it's college, right? It's more than just the courses that you're taking. It's also the life you're going to live for the next 4 years. So if anybody has anything to say on that, Sam.
Yeah, I think certainly there's a number of things to consider when picking a college. Personally, my personal view is that there's a number of colleges where the computer science degrees are, or the computer science programs are very good, and at a certain level, you don't necessarily need to find the best computer science program. You just need to find a computer science program that's good and fits with what you want to pursue. So personally, Harvard's computer science program is particularly theoretical. So like Jake and Roger and some other people were talking about, there's a lot of, courses that talk about, mathematical proofs, and you do less programming. And so I think when you're looking at a school, knowing if their computer science program is focused more on that sort of mathematical proofs theoretical side, or the sort of project-based, more practical side, is something important to consider. And if you sort of agree with theoretical versus practical, one or the other, then perhaps there's a school that focuses on technology, but perhaps it's too theoretical for you, or one that's more practical, that isn't as focused on technology, but has sort of project-based classes that you like. So personally, I sort of agree with what Matt said about theoretical computer science programs, saying, the tools, the paradigms are going to change, but sort of having that sort of strong foundation is the most important. That's what I personally agreed with. So I was looking more for beyond just schools that are good at technology or technology-focused school. Instead, I sort of reframed it as looking for schools with sort of a strong theoretical basis in their computer science program.
Thank you. Isabella.
Yeah, so kind of going off that, so I'm at Stanford, which I'd say in my experience so far has been a lot less theoretical, but you can really make it as theoretical or practical as you want. So a lot of the CS classes I've been taking have been really project-based, which I've really liked. But I think a lot of these schools, or maybe it's just Stanford specifically, gives you a lot of flexibility on what you're able to focus on. So within the computer science major, you can go down different tracks and kind of beyond like the basic classes. And obviously you're doing those math classes. Beyond that, you can kind of tailor your experience to what you want to focus on. But I think one of the benefits of not going to a strictly school that just focuses on technology is despite doing CS, I've been able to find a bunch of other minors that I think will be helpful. I'm doing a data science minor, and I'm also doing a design minor. And I think just having the opportunity to take some classes that weren't CS, if I went to a school that was just strictly based upon that, I think I wouldn't have found those minors or found interest in other fields that I didn't know I had, because I didn't really have the option to take classes like that in high school. So I think it really depends how set you are, if you know exactly what you want, or if you want a little bit more flexibility in the classes you're going to take and the degree you want to pursue. And also one other thing I'd say is just, I think to check, like some schools, if you really are passionate about pursuing like a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts, because some schools, like, you can only do a Bachelor of Arts.
Okay, Gabe.
Sure. I'm going to take this a little bit less in the how theoretical or not should your school be. I went to Wentworth Institute of Technology, firmly a technology-focused school. I was entirely on the non-theoretical side of programming. It was a lot of very particular projects, but the easily biggest asset I found in my time at school was just interacting with other very technological minded individuals. I found it incredibly emotionally satisfying in a time of great growth and kind of starting my independence. And so being able to surround myself with people who think similarly, and often lined up a lot closer to the people that have become my coworkers as I've entered the workforce than a lot of my peers in high school and earlier. And I found, because I am a very technologically focused individual, going to a very technologically focused school was a perfect fit.
Interesting. Amen.
Yeah, so I want to add a little bit of color to a slight counterpoint. And instead of choosing a school that works really well, how to choose a school that you do not want to go to. When I was looking at colleges for the longest time, I was like, I want to go to this specific school. I want to go to this school. I wanted to go to this school. And I was dead set on it. And I went and visited it, and I realized I just wasn't going to be happy there. And one of the things that I think is important when it comes to college is pick somewhere that you're going to be happy, or at least don't pick somewhere that you're not going to be happy. Don't sacrifice your own enjoyment just because it has a good program. Ultimately, you're spending 4 years of your life there, or more or less, and you don't want to be spending a huge amount of time and money on something that you either end up regretting or just don't end up enjoying.
Anna.
Yeah, kind of to play devil's advocate against the technical schools point. I think in terms of like the computer science degree that you receive, like if you are pursuing that, it's probably about the same. So it was kind of like Gabe was saying, like going back to whatever culture fits better for you. Like for me, I find it really exciting to meet people from other majors who have like a very different way of thinking and exploring classes outside of my major. So like right now I'm in a class about wool fiber, and I've taken classes about music and Spanish and like the music of games and things like that. Like things that there's like a large range of like liberal studies classes that I could take. And I just think that's really exciting that you can find a class for basically anything here, like any kind of interest outside of tech that I may have. So something to consider.
Yeah, for sure. Jared.
So I know we mentioned earlier in the call about if you're on the fence about choosing computer science, a lot of schools will give you the flexibility. As someone who went to a tech school, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, I don't know if this is the same for every tech school, but I know it was the same for at least like RIT and maybe some other ones. If you're going to a tech school, you have to choose the major coming in. So when you're going to a tech school like that, you sacrifice a lot of that flexibility to drive down into the focus of what you want to be doing. I know a lot of people that like went to my school and then immediately figured out, oh, I don't want to be doing computer science anymore. And a school like that is not as easy to switch your major in. And I had to go in with a plan of like, okay, I'm going to start out in the game design major and move to and double major in the computer science major, because I know that is a path that's easier. And I needed to do all that before getting into school, or else I would have had to spend so much more time like doing a bunch of bureaucracy in order to like get the majors I want. And if you're going to a tech school, the warning is that you have to do more of this pre-preparation, because you're going to be set on that path than if you go to a liberal arts school where you're given that flexibility. You're given more of like, I have time to figure things out.
Okay, Roger.
So I think, Gabe mentioned just the whole, like, college is really a time of great growth. And I think that can't be overstated enough. Like, this is a hugely transformative time in your life. And I was considering going to a tech school, and I'm really glad I didn't. I think just being around people, sort of all different facets of life was really good for me. And like, there's still within my major were people who are more technically minded. And so I did get a bit of that community, but I think just like not being surrounded by that, where everything was tech all the time, was really incredible for me. And also just like male to female ratio, I think is something that's really important to consider, because like just from a social perspective, I think, being in a environment where it's, really gender balanced and, it's not just people focused around one thing, I think, just for social development, I found to be really important.
And Jake.
So I was a double major in a liberal art, so I couldn't have done what I did at a tech school. And yet, one thing that I think we'd really, all of us would really be remiss if we didn't mention. In the last 10 years or so, there have been big institutional problems with upper education when it comes to too many people entering school and saying, I'm going to be a computer science major. My particular school, University of California, Santa Cruz, when I was a student there, 50% of incoming students said that they were planning to do computer science. And we were a big liberal arts school, which was supposed to have basically even distribution in every major. And that was untenable. And so what the school did is essentially the early classes in computer science were forced to become what's called a weed out class, where they would ask students to do extreme amounts, either already know what they're doing because they did something like, I don't know, go to SummerTech, or if not do that, do extreme amounts of work to barely stay afloat in these classes that were way harder than anything late in the major, to specifically try to get people out of the computer science major and force them somewhere else, because the school logistically and financially could not handle the number of people who were trying to do that. And one of the big advantages, gigantic advantages of a technological school is they don't have that problem. The number of people who go to those schools is the number of people who get a tech degree. They know that they just, they accept some number of students, and different schools have different amounts of this problem for sure. You should always, talk to the students at this particular school or that particular school that you're considering to learn about whether that's relevant at your school at that time, all of that. But in general, if you want a technical degree and the schools you're looking at are liberal arts schools, at the very least, check to make sure that you can feasibly actually get it, because I knew a lot of people who did get weeded out, and it was a mess for everyone.
Interesting. Liliana.
Yeah, I think Jake definitely is bringing up a really important point here. And I, as someone who did go to a tech school, Rochester Institute of Technology, even there, that was definitely it was very cutthroat between majors, and like if you wanted to be in computer science or especially game development, it was very competitive and cutthroat. And there were classes that were intended kind of to weed people out, which is not great. So it's definitely something to be aware of. I definitely don't know how to solve the problem.
When you say it's cutthroat, what do you mean?
Yeah, so I mean, and this might be specific to, just to my school, but if you wanted to transfer into like computer science. So first of all, there were limited numbers to get in when you're applying, right? So if you were applying for a different major that's less popular, you'd have a higher chance of being admitted, because you have to declare your major when you apply. And usually there's like ranked choices too. So you're like, my first choice is to be in game design. My second choice is to be computer science. My third choice, information sciences, or something like that, right? And there's limited numbers of slots. And so that's more competitive, and it's going to be more difficult to get admitted for the major you want. But then maybe you do get in, but not for the major you want, or you change your mind and you want to transfer into a different major. It was very cutthroat between who gets to be able to take those classes and that in the major you want, and trying to, get professors. I saw people like really trying to get professors' favors, to get into their classes and things like that, because it was extremely competitive. Even within the major itself, it was competitive, I should say. Like, even to get into a game design class as a game design student, you had to fight some people out of the way.
Interesting. Roger.
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to mention is I don't think the weed out issue is a problem every school. It's certainly something to watch out for, but like both the schools I've gone to have been, large private research universities, and there you have a bunch of grad students who are getting funded by the undergraduate tuition, and so they kind of can, like crank up the class size probably easier than a state school or a liberal arts school would be able to. And so I think that is something to keep in mind, but I wouldn't try to view that as like an issue at all schools. But yeah, definitely a good thing to look out for.
And Jared.
So I guess a little bit of a counterpoint to Jake, but also agreeing with some stuff what Liliana said. I went to a tech school, and my first major, my game design major, is a liberal arts degree, liberal arts major. So I went to a tech school with a liberal arts major, and I could have, because I went into school because I wanted to dual major in computer science and game design. And so to go back to what I was talking about, I had to go in with a plan. The game design major at RPI was incredibly class limited because it's a liberal arts major at a tech school. So I wanted to do something like the other way around and be computer science going into game design. That would have been much more difficult because there's only so many like game design staff. They're only so prepared for this liberal arts degree. So it was much easier for me to start as this liberal arts major, as a game design major, and then go into computer science, which they are much more prepared for. That is like some of the more like planning and some of the more like stuff that you have to deal with if you're going to a tech school. Is like, if you want to do anything with liberal arts, you need to know that like going into the school, or else it's going to be very difficult to get all that handled.
Thank you, Isabella.
I was going to say one other thing, just kind of relating to class sizes. So last year I went to Dartmouth and then I transferred to Stanford, and I was doing CS at both. And at Dartmouth, it was really nice. Actually, my classes were like 15 to 20 people, which I think made the classes definitely a lot easier compared to Stanford. But for some people, like there are a lot of CS classes here, and I'm sure at many of your other universities there are 700 people, and that's really different. So I just think the benefit of a liberal arts education, if you do want to be a CS major and want to explore some other classes, is that the actual class size is a lot smaller. So if you really like that like intimate feel and like knowing everyone in your class, being able to always find a partner for P-sets, it's great. Or if you don't really care about that, then like a larger school with more classes that are easier to get into with more diversity of classes, I think is good. But going in, I think for a lot of people who I know, they really cared about class size. So I think that's definitely something that you should consider.
Thank you. Ryan Heaton. Ryan just joined us right now at the panel. He is a current sophomore CS major at Dartmouth. Go ahead,
Yes.
Ryan.
Hello, everyone. I just want to quickly chime in about the class sizes stuff. That is a great thing about what we have at Dartmouth is the class sizes, but an important aspect of that is part of the reason they're so small is because it's really hard to get into the classes you want to get into. Like it's all a lottery system, and you put what you want to sign up for, but because the classes are so small, it's very, very difficult. Even if you are a CS major and like as a sophomore who's declared my major, it's still pretty difficult. So that's something else to take into account, is you want to look at what classes they offer and see if they have a breadth of intro classes that you'd be comfortable taking. Because if per se like a situation arises where you don't get your first or second choice CS class like for like 2 semesters in a row, like what happened to me last year, you need to find a backup. So that's something to keep in mind.
Very interesting. Liliana.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment quickly on what Jared was saying earlier, and just mention, because Jared brought up that at RPI, game design was a liberal arts major, and at RIT, it was considered like a technical major, and it was harder to get into at RPI partially because of its liberal arts status, Jared was saying. So it's important to also to just research at your school, like one major could be considered something really different depending on what school you're at. So just wanted to put that out there.
That's very interesting. Jake.
So just to really big summarize here, there's clearly like an extremely wide spectrum of experiences on this. And some parts of this that might be really important to you, the class sizes, how easy it is to get into them. Literally, if you go to the school, if you visit the school and just like You know, look over there's some students, like if you find 5 students standing next to each other, they'll just know. They can just tell you immediately, oh yeah, at our school you have to do this, this, and that, and it's easy, or it's hard, or it's terrible, or it's great, or yeah, class sizes are about 10, or the class sizes are about 1,000. And like, this is a conversation, if you, a lot of people I know like to visit schools and stuff like that. This is one of the best things you can get out of visiting a school. And it's kind of hard to get that from like an official tour, but if you just ask a student who goes there, have a 2-minute conversation with them, you can get basically everything you would need to know about this. And they'll all know, you know, like it's not a secret for the people who go there. And it is such a difference in the experience you actually have in your classes. For me personally, a large part of the reason I went to the school I did is because they gave me an offer that made me part of their honors program. And I read really closely into that offer that the honors program got priority and choice on classes. And so I was able to get the classes that I wanted while everyone around me could not. That made me feel real weird for all of college, but that's how it goes sometimes. That's like, that was the big advantage of the school I chose. And because of that, I was able to get a double major in one major that basically was trying to get people out of it, and in another major that was super small and challenging to get into. And that just would not have been possible. I would not have been able to get the degree that I did without that specific offer from that specific school. But that's only my school, and you know, it's so easy. Like I've talked to people from different schools, and in 3 minutes, you know what their school is like. So,
Right.
you know, go out and talk to them.
Excellent. You know, a lot of people obviously ask me over the years about this, and my young junior teachers getting ready to go to college and all of that. And just yesterday, I had one of my current teachers asking, well, it's between these two schools, which school should I go to? And then people will send me that link to whatever that website is that lists, that ranks the top CS schools. How important is it to get on that list and go to a school? Like, is it important when you're choosing that school to go to a school that's ranked higher than another school? Does it really matter in the end, or is it much more about the school itself and the opportunities in life and all the things you guys have been talking about in the last few minutes? Roger.
So I think the most important, I think the most important thing about that list is everyone looks at it. And so people are going to go to CMU, Stanford, because they're at the top of that list. And regardless of the quality of the education, you know, people who are really interested in CS and really good in school are going to go to that school. And as a result, you know, the top companies all recruit really heavily from those schools. So I think if you can afford to go to one of those schools and you get in, like, yeah, you know, definitely go for those reasons. As far as the quality of teaching, I don't think it is really correlated, because the list is really based on research. And so if you're interested in research, yeah, you know, there are really famous professors at those schools, but those people are worried about their research. They're not spending the time teaching well. I think maybe, you know, arguably, you know, what companies are recruiting from a school and how good are the students you're around might be more important than how good teachers are. But yeah, I think for those two reasons, pay attention to that list. But yeah, the rankings aren't based on teaching. They're really based on research.
That's interesting. Matt.
Yeah, so I mean, let me just lower my hand. Just to answer that sort of on two different levels. I think in terms of slightly building off of what Roger was saying, but approaching it in a different direction, I think that those rankings matter in the sense that other people are looking at them in that same idea. And I think what that means maybe for your experience and you being in one of those schools, that can often mean that people who are interested or who are sort of like motivated students who are interested in sort of like have that interest and know to congregate around those schools that have those research opportunities and those kinds of things. I think that can tend to be like, if you know that you want to be around that cohort of students, you can find like-minded students there. So if that's something that you're interested in and you like, that is a culture that you want to be a part of, you can get a sense of that if you visit those schools, or sort of, you know, whatever you are looking for, you can sort of get a sense of that when you talk to students there. On the hiring side, or sort of on the sort of post college, what does that matter? I find that, you know, having done a fair amount of actually interviewing, I tend to find that CS is nice in a sense, where very quickly it becomes about how are you, you know, are you actually able to reason about problems, and are you able to, like, you have the opportunity to show your skills, and it becomes very quickly less about the actual degree when you're doing that technical interview process. So I find that it does tend to be something where, you know, as Roger mentioned, you know, the degree can be something that gets you in the door potentially, but very quickly in the technical interview process, it starts to be about your experience and what you know.
Thank you. Eamon.
Yeah, I wanted to give a slightly bounce off what Matt was saying and give us slightly more of an employer perspective. From having hired people from my current company, having hired people in the past, the degree, the best thing the degree gets you is maybe your resume gets looked at a little bit harder. It doesn't get you a job. Your degree, in software at least, is not going to be what gets your position, gets your career. Everything that you can do for the best thing you can do for your career is get experience. And granted, getting considered is a little bit easier when you have a degree, but the degree itself is not, it's not the be all end all. Life doesn't stop once college is done. There's so much more past that. And I mean, as I mentioned, I don't have a degree and I've not needed it. Like, it's not the most important thing in the world. It's not the be all end all.
Jared.
And also to bounce off of what Roger said, while these lists are about like research, if there is a specific thing you want to research, I know some high school programs have you reading research papers and you're interested in some of their research, you could just choose to go to the college of the people doing those research, and then you will get that research. You're more likely to get that research opportunity. If you're interested in a specific thing that someone is doing, yeah, go to that school where they're doing it.
Right. Roger.
So one thing to keep in mind about research is someone who's running a lab has almost no time for some random undergrad. So if you're interested in doing research, like, and you go to one of these schools, your mileage could really vary. I mean, you could work in the lab of someone doing that research, and, you know, you'd work under someone like me who might help you or might not. I think even choosing based on research is kind of complicated because, you know, at like a school like Dartmouth, for example, the professors might be working directly with the students, whereas at Carnegie Mellon, it's like there's a layer of grad students and postdocs between you and any professor here.
Interesting. All right. So, Jake.
One very brief note on that. Often the big predictor of that kind of thing is how much you actually interact with the professors, or sometimes the PhD students as well, depending on how different schools have different resources for different people, etc. But if you are enterprising about it, you can do that at just about any school. I got to work with a professor really closely at my school, even though he was consistently teaching over 100 people classes, because I did really well in his class first. Then I signed up to be a teaching assistant, essentially, for one of his future classes. And in doing that, you know, I helped make some practice problems and spoke to him directly and like showed and talked to him about, like, I was really interested in the thing we were doing. And then I actually did an independent study with specifically him later on, and very closely got to work with the research he was currently doing because I really interacted with that person. That is on many levels some luck, some privilege, you know, the fact I was able to do well in his class because I prepared myself really well doing other things, and he just so happened to teach things in just the right order at just the right times that matched up with my schedule, matched up, etc. But in general, at varying schools and varying degree programs, there are opportunities for you to interact with professors and their research. They often, they might have like little symposia type things at various places, various times. Those are really useful if you're really concerned with the quality of the thing you're getting, because invariably it's not about the name of the school you went to, but it might be about the name of the professor that is saying, this person helped me with my research and is on the paper, if you can get all the way that far. And that's usually more the purview of graduate students, but I've talked to some undergrads who made it that far, and it made a big difference for them, mostly because they were pursuing graduate school and continuing past that. Even all of that doesn't really matter that much if you're just trying to become a software developer at a lot of different places where you might become a software developer. In my current job, nothing I just said matters at all.
Okay. Well, and I do not mean this to be a plug for SummerTech, because everybody in here, I think, is already a SummerTech person, whether you're watching or on the panel. But I always thought that one of the things that SummerTech did well, and not even on purpose, is develop soft skills, right? There's a lot of talk about hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills, obviously, your tech and what you can do and your talent and all of that. But the soft skills, how much has that played a part into your getting jobs, getting opportunities, and whatnot, whether it's your communication skills, your front-facing skills, and all of that? I'm really curious about that. Gabe.
1,000%. The skills from both learning at SummerTech and all of the time I spent teaching and learning how to teach and how to communicate this was, throughout my time in college, just 1,000% the most valuable thing I had. It made me so much more comfortable and capable at expressing my thoughts and solutions to problems, and presenting the kind of different approaches that might be there. And it made it so helpful in any group projects, interviews for internships, anything. I always felt like I had this rock solid foundation to fall back on.
Nice. Sam.
Yeah, I would also speak to how helpful teaching is, and just the general how to communicate your ideas at SummerTech instills in you. Currently, for about the past year, I've been working as a perception and autonomy intern, working on some projects for Draper Labs. And often, when you're in sort of the intern position, the people above you are busy. They don't have a ton of time to look at what you send them. So they're like, go work on this project. And I'm like, hey, I did this, this, and this. And they're like, okay, I'm not going to read through, the 3 pages you wrote up. I just sort of read the important stuff. And so being able to not only summarize what you did, but explain your methods clearly and say, you wanted me to get to this goal, and this was my methodology for sort of this analysis and this experimentation. Being able to explain why you did something, and also being able to figure out what the correct way is to sort of get from point A to point B are 2 things I think SummerTech helps you figure out really well, both as a teacher and as a student.
Roger.
So I think one of my natural tendencies, sort of SummerTech was my first job. And I think one of my natural tendencies was to sort of blame things on other people. Like, something wasn't communicated correctly. Well, this person didn't understand like what I said or the document that I wrote. And I really learned at SummerTech that no, a lot of these things are me problems. Like, this wasn't communicated correctly because I did a bad job of writing this document, or I didn't properly check in with the people that I was working with to make sure that we're on the same page about this thing. And so I think just getting that lesson working at SummerTech before I was at in a later job was really valuable. And I think, it's SummerTech was certainly, more forgiving, for me learning that lesson than probably, having this issue and blaming other people in my first internship would have been.
Interesting. Jake.
So I'm kind of on the extreme end right now, what I'm about to say. But in my last few months of work, I would say for every single like touch of my keyboard to add code to the actual project that I've been working on, there has been at least 1 hour of writing up designs or getting into meetings and explaining and making sure that all the right, what's the jargon? All the key stakeholders have had a chance to weigh in on almost all of the work I have done. Has been more about communicating and making it clear what should be done rather than any actual technical challenge in writing the code. Again, like the last few months of code I've actually written was not any more complicated than what I've seen lots of kids be able to do within 2 weeks of learning programming, because the hard part wasn't the programming. The hard part was deciding at a, big picture level, how do we want this to, how do we want users to understand this idea? How do we want this part of the system to interact with this other part of the system? How do we want this thing to work in a year from now when there are going to be these people working on that? Those are the hard questions almost every time in like my last, like half a year of what I've been doing. And so, again, I'm on the extreme end there. So take that, if that scares you a little bit, that, you don't want to spend your whole time writing things up instead of actually writing code. But like my programming skills have been like my 11th most valuable skill for what I've been doing. So that's sometimes what software development is like.
Interesting. All right, thank you. Does anybody have anything to talk about? This might be a little out there. Finding and pursuing and preparing for internship opportunities, I know is always a big challenge for people. Roger.
So my internships that I did have all been at, big tech companies. And I think, those they try to tell you, work on side projects, personal projects. For the big companies, at least, those don't matter. The recruiters aren't looking at your GitHub. They probably wouldn't understand it even if they did. It's all just like a certain style of algorithms questions. And so there's this website LeetCode. There's this book, Cracking the Coding Interview. If you want to get an internship at one of the big tech companies, like just do those problems. Don't spend your time on like personal side projects. Those algorithms questions are really all that matter for that. I think the right time to start with those is probably once you've had an algorithms class in college. But yeah, if big companies are where you want to go, the LeetCode interviews are really all you have to know.
Thank you. Isabella.
Yeah, I was kind of going to touch more upon like some of the soft skills for preparing for
Sure.
internships. LeetCode definitely I think is super helpful, but I think you'll be surprised at how simple some of the interviews actually can be when you practice the problems on LeetCode. And I think something to focus on, which I know everyone says sounds really cliche, and it's just something that everyone says, but I think it's really important to reach out to alumni at your school just to network, because especially these big tech companies, like they're just going through thousands of resumes. Like it's really just tough to even get your foot in the door with an interview because there's just so many people. And I think that even just getting in at first is even harder than just the interview. So I think just like reaching out to alumni, from your school, or just cold emailing, cold calling even, it's scary and daunting, but I think it's really helpful. And I think talking to older people at your school, because most people have jobs pretty early, where like seniors or juniors, can be really helpful when you come into college.
Jared.
So going on with that point, my internships while I was in college were all research related. And in my case, what got me those internships was the people I knew. It's making connections. In my cases, it's instead of talking to alumni, I was talking to professors. Like if, in my case, like talk to your favorite professors, see if they have opportunities for maybe research internships, or if they know anyone, because professors have friends and sometimes people need to work the labs.
Okay, Gabe.
I'm going to give much less specific computer science. Here's how to get that interview. Here's how to nail that interview, and give a much more general, do it early. I had required internships. My school had a co-op program. So for 2 semesters in my last 2 years, instead of having a summer break, I would need to do these internships. And for the first one of those, I put off the first month of classes of saying, okay, I'm going to get my resume in order. I'm going to make sure I know what I'm looking for, going to learn these job searching tools, whatever. And that was just too much time. I missed, I think, a single career fair. Just like all of the university's kind of resources of here's who we can put you in touch with, here's the employers, were basically tapped out. Fortunately, I was able to get an internship through networking with another former SummerTech person that's in the area I went to school with. But it was very dicey for a moment because I took those couple of weeks of, I can wait a little, I can take my time. So especially as you get, even slightly close, really start thinking about those internships, because at least to me, those were also the valuable part of my college experience for then preparing me for the workforce.
Okay, Liliana.
Yeah, this is all really good advice. And one thing I'd like to add is just as soon as the application goes up, what I think made the difference for me getting an internship at Rockstar was as soon as the application went up, I applied. Like they didn't, so I was one of the first people they got the chance to look at. And I think that makes a big difference. And I will also add, for at least for my field in game development, I think internships are really important because I can pretty much definitively say that of my peers who graduated around the same time, I know I have one other friend who has a job in the industry. Only one other person who has a job in the industry, and she also had an internship, and at a studio, and I had an internship at a studio, and we both have full-time jobs now. And for people who didn't, it's a very limited number of opportunities. Those who didn't have them currently don't have the full-time jobs.
Interesting. Anna.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a bit about like the first time you're approaching the internship application process, like perhaps your freshman year. I think internships following freshman year are there's like a very limited options. There's not a whole lot of them. Like a lot of recruiters won't even want to talk to you as a freshman. Like I went to a career fair, none of them wanted to talk to me as soon as they found out. So there are some programs available, and kind of like Gabe was saying earlier, some of them have very early application deadlines. Like we're talking about like November of your freshman year. But like, are you really thinking about internships your first semester? Like I feel like you're more trying to adjust to college life, so it's really easy to not have your focus on that search. So that's kind of where I was. I was not able to get an internship after my freshman year, but what I did do was work for SummerTech as a counselor and got some really great skills that helped me get an internship after my sophomore year. So you don't have to get an internship every summer. You can do other things to kind of build like both your soft skills and your hard skills, and to prepare you for when you are ready for that search.
But you have to work at SummerTech is what you're saying.
Yes.
Perfect.
A shameless plug.
Amen.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about just the whole career thing in general, not specific to internships, but the thing that I, at least personally, remain convinced that got me through my current position, through all of my past positions, was I had resume years on my resume from even when I was in high school, specifically because I did work for a gaming community and I was managing websites and I was doing a lot of little things which were professional. They absolutely mattered on a resume because I learned how to interact in a job's world, but they weren't necessarily what you would commonly think of as a full-time position or an internship. So if you have an opportunity where you can get some years on your resume through, for example, SummerTech, absolutely take it, because getting your resume, getting the interview is the most important part of getting a job. And anything you can do to make yourself look good at first glance definitely will help.
So it's worth the low pay that I pay you. Perfect. Roger.
One thing I just want to mention, sort of touching on what Jared was saying. So an alternative to internships is doing research. The NSF has a program called REU, Research for Undergraduates, where they will, for anyone who's a US citizen, pay you a small amount of money to go work for a professor for a summer. And if you're interested in getting a PhD, like PhD admissions committees don't care about any company you interned at, no matter how prestigious it is or how much money they paid you. It's really about, did you get a publication? Did you get a rec letter from a famous professor? And so if you do want to get a PhD, doing research is something to consider, even though it pays a lot less than a tech internship does.
Interesting. Jake.
So just to what Liliana said about if you want to go into game design and game development, that you need the internship. For everyone I've talked to in the game design world, yeah, absolutely true. But that the gaming, getting jobs in gaming is extremely competitive in a way that getting jobs in kind of more general software is not. So what I did was I never got an internship. I've never been an intern in any meaningful way. Instead, I let my friend Jared do all that, and then he got a really great job. And then when I was good and ready, I'd been a SummerTech director. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot of things for myself. It was really valuable for me. It's what made me happy. It set me up. And then I was like, all right, that was good. I guess I should get a real job now. Hey, Jared, are they hiring? Yes. All right, cool. I'll do that. Never had an internship. Sometimes it can be that simple. So internships are really good if what you want to learn about is what it would be like to be at a company that you're interning at, or if you're in a more specific slice of an industry where it is really hard and really competitive, then absolutely go for it. But sometimes you don't need an internship at all. And the networking thing is really, really can be everything. For me, it was basically, a get out of no internship free card. So.
Excellent. Amen.
And since we're talking about asking Jared about whether they're hiring, my company's hiring, Lambda. So if anyone wants to come and work for us, let us know.
I'll call you. Okay. We have about, a little over 10 minutes left. I guess the last thing that I want to hear about, and look, most of the people that you're talking to in here are either parents of or kids who are either middle school or high school. Maybe they're getting ready to go to college right away or just starting to look. Knowing what you know now, even with the industry changing as much as it changes. And if you were 13 or 14 and 15, and please don't say go to SummerTech, what would you do? Amen.
Volunteer. If you have an opportunity to volunteer for a community, for a project, for something that you could take technical skills and really make use of them, do it. I learned an incredible amount by volunteering for a gaming community and maintaining their systems. And if you have an opportunity, where you can use your skills, even if it's not necessarily getting paid. I wasn't when I started. It became way more valuable in the amounts of money I made later than they could have ever paid me for that position.
Excellent, Roger.
I think one of the big pieces of advice I give my younger self is to just not focus solely on tech. Like, you'll have so much time in college and beyond to learn this stuff. Like, if I were 14 again, I'd probably take drum lessons, learn to ski, do sports more. I think, yeah, definitely enjoying being young, probably more than I did would have been good. I think also, sort of meet the education system where it is. Like, if your school has computer science, that's great. Certainly take those classes, but, physics and math and statistics and just, sort of the stuff that American high schools are good at, just really take advantages of those classes. And yeah, like I said, life's long and, there'll be time for all this stuff later.
Life is long. It's a new one. Gabe.
I think I'm probably going to be a pretty extreme outlier on this panel, with this being advice of something that I would need to have changed, but take the search much more seriously than I did. My method for figuring out what colleges to apply to was reach out to the SummerTech community that I was close with that was older than me and say, hey, where are you going to school? Are you enjoying it? And if the answer was yes, I basically applied to those and then worked backward me. And I was incredibly fortunate that there was someone who was at a school that I ended up going to and enjoying. But it also definitely was not the best way for me to get an education. I think I ended up in a school that was ultimately lacking in a lot of fields. And I still had a great time. It still worked out, but really, put in the legwork and you'll get a lot more out of it.
Interesting. Sam.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, I agree with Roger. If I could have a do-over, I think I would spend a lot more time doing things that aren't computer science, because computer science is one of those fields. I think that if you're serious about studying it and wanting to get into that industry, you'll gain the requisite experience along the way. Sort of, if you just do your due diligence, there's a number of paths you can take. But I will say, with respect to computer science, I wish I'd spent more time doing sort of individual projects. I think there's a lot that you can learn by just sort of setting yourself a goal of like, hey, I want to make like a really simple chess playing AI, just like super simple. And just sort of Googling and saying, all right, what's the first step to doing this, and sort of going down that path. I think there's a lot that can be learned by just sort of setting those larger goals and working towards them on your own and reaching out to friends and just sort of individually seeking knowledge. Yeah.
Liliana.
I kind of already mentioned previously that like a really good thing to start doing is to start making games just to see like if you like it. But and one good way to do that, there's a lot of free game engines. You can try like the Unreal Engine and all sorts of or Unity, but if that seems daunting from like a technical perspective, you can try making board games, card games, just reading about games and game design and keeping up with the industry. All these things will help you get into college and get jobs in the future and these sorts of things.
Anna.
This applies more to the high schoolers, but in terms of preparing myself for college, I wish I would have taken more AP classes / AP exams that would have gotten me out of classes that I had to take once I got to college. Like my school required me to take like general chemistry and physics and horrible things like that. And if I had just taken it in high school, I could have placed out of it, and then I could have had more time in my schedule to take more classes that I was actually interested in. So if you have the opportunity to do that, I would recommend that.
Interesting. I would have guessed you would have taken a lot of AP classes in high school. Who knew? Isabella.
I actually was thinking the exact same thing. I took a lot of AP classes in high school, but then senior spring, I ended up not taking the exams just because I think it was just the end of the year. But I think I definitely regret that for some classes because I think at the liberal arts school, like at Dartmouth, it didn't really affect me as much. But at Stanford, where there are a lot more requirements, if I took the classes and if I just took the exam, I would have placed out in college, which would have saved me an extra quarter, which would have been nice. So I think that's a big thing. But also kind of counterintuitive to what kind of everything's been saying. I think if you are going to SummerTech, you already have really great coding skills. You're already a leg up. But I think it's important to just relax and focus honestly on picking the right school that's best for you. Because once you get to college, you can learn all of these skills. It's really helpful to know what your interests are. But I think you also will have time, if you're not going to strictly technical school, to figure it out. I think the hardest part, honestly, is just getting in.
Interesting. Jake.
So I had a little bit of a different time in high school than probably most people. I was going through some really serious mental health issues, and I almost didn't graduate high school at all. And so honestly, what I really wish I'd known then, and I think this is more universally applicable than to just people who were kind of in and out of even being enrolled in high school, but chill. When I was in senior year and I was in and out of like being healthy enough to be in school at all, man, I was okay, I guess I gotta it's that time of year. I guess I'm supposed to be applying to colleges. And so I tried to apply to colleges and I didn't even succeed. And I thought, all right, it's over. I'm not going to graduate high school. I'm not going to go to college. Like it's done. Now I'm going to have to figure out something else to do with my life. And that could not be further from the truth. I ended up taking a gap year, which ended up being super helpful to me for any number of reasons. I thought I was going to be a math major, and then I tried teaching math for a year, and that was a lot of fun, but I was not a math major. And eventually I found my way, I found a way to get a high school degree. Eventually I found a way to apply to colleges in a way that was more mentally healthy for me. And it worked out great. At this point, all of the people I work with, the place where I am in life, I guess nobody would know the difference between me having gone through all the stuff, like taking all the AP classes and going straight into the college, the great name, and taking all the classes there and going everything straight to my job. I know people who did that at my job, and then I also know me who didn't do any of that, and we had the same job doing the same stuff. I getting there eventually is still getting there, and it can work out even if it doesn't work out the way you thought it would.
Excellent. All right. This was great. I hope everybody found this informative, and I hope we answered a lot of questions here. I learned some things, and I'm not going back to college. We will do more of these in the future, and we're also really working hard on sort of bolstering our offerings for high school kids as they're getting ready for college, and trying to give them as much opportunity. For someone, my background, the hard skills are not as nearly as interesting as the soft skills, and that's always going to be my focus. I think the hard skills come pretty easily from within this community, teaching each other, but that's really our focus going forward. We've been working on this for the past couple of years, and we have some pretty cool stuff coming out in the near future. So thank you for being here. This has been recorded. I will put this up if you want to share it with anybody. I'll get it up in a day or so. And otherwise, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. And if panel, you can hang out with me for a few minutes if you don't mind. Matt, I know it's like 2 a.m. over there, so hang on. Thanks, everybody.